Konbanwa minasan. Arigatou gozaimasu. Hope everybody's doing good. Just going to share this on Facebook since this is our final episode of the season. Hopefully, we will get more views as a result. Now, as usual, if you would like your fortune told, please comment gender, zodiac sign, and if you would like a general future, a career, or a romance reading. So, being our final episode, I will try to end tonight on good spirits. If we come back for another season, it'll be because people want their fortunes told after we conclude all of these broadcasts, and that will inspire a demand for it. Until then, though, we will take a break while I focus on making my new album A Point to Prove. Oh, great Clow cards of Kuro Rido, reveal to me the answers I seek using the power of the universal consciousness and infinite intelligence to guide me in the direction of answers I seek for my general future, using the power of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Release. This because it's below my crotch now. All right. So the first 5 cards I drew in the general reading are the Libra, the Voice, the Sakura, the Sword, and the Flower. So the Libra indicates balance. The Voice indicates that something in the future will use my voice. It will need my voice. It'll be required. Sakura's card indicates being the hero of my own story, trying to stand strong and live my story the way I want to, despite how things might appear. That is why the Sword pops up as sort of that will serve to be my greatest strength. Other people don't have the answers, and even though I don't have all the answers, finding my own inner power will guide me to the answers. Now, the Flower indicates sorry, my throat is a bit dry right now. Let's see if I can get a sip of this. There we go. Okay, so the Flower indicates time of harvest, especially when it comes to the ideas of manifesting. The idea is that a new flowering is about to unfold of things. So that's very promising, especially with the confusion and the disarray of emotions throughout today. It's really been an up and down emotional roller coaster. There were times where things were really good. There were a lot of times where they weren't so good too, and I had to tell myself, well, it couldn't get worse, it could only get better from here, and that's kind of what helped get me through the day. So knowing that, I will now draw another 5 cards to see if I can find more answers regarding the general future. Please reveal to me what other messages you have, oh great Clow cards of Kurorido, using the power of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Enlighten me with your wisdom. Release. All right, I apologize for the noise in the background. That's my stepfather yelling at the dog. Anyways, we have the other 5 cards, which is, and you know what, at this point, like today's been one of those days, nothing surprises me anymore. But yeah, we have the change, the glow, the thunder, the jump, and the dark. So the change is indicating switching. It could be sort of like becoming a new person from the old person I was. The glow could indicate basically shining bright. Things are going on that are actually shining light on the darkness, though they may remain unseen. The thunder indicates that now is the time to get charged up and really go for everything I can in every sort of aspect of things. The jump is why that's tied together as well, because that's indicating taking a leap of faith. The dark is saying that this is sort of like a period of darkness. It is sort of the dark times, but the old saying goes, it is always darkest at night right before the light of dawn. So that's probably, if I had to guess, what an indication of all this is. It is this way because good things are about to happen any moment. So I have to focus on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, trust with faith, and not given to the outer appearance and the negativity of certain things around me, which that has been a battle in itself. To describe my day that would really tie into the answers of why this all makes sense to me, it felt like I was a lone samurai warrior armed with nothing but a katana trying to fight an army of negativity all by myself, and it was not a fun battle. I'll put it this way, I wondered, did I survive? Am I dead? Am I still here? It was a hell of a day. But I'm still here because I'm reading these cards, so I will make the most of it. It was a challenging day, though. In fact, I've been asking myself throughout the day, what more could I do in one regard? And I've also been asking myself, like, okay, for all I have done, where's my compensation for it? Because I feel like I should have gotten something for all I have put in the effort and sacrifice. Yet it doesn't seem like I really have. Anyways, oh great Clow cards, a Kuroriro, reveal to me a message for the situation of my romance. This guy again. I'm like, you know what? I don't even care. I'm like, considering everything that I've gone through today, I'm not really surprised. And you realize that's a racially offensive term. First of all, I wouldn't say that's accurate. In fact, I'd say if you were going to call it anything, in the words of Baby Metal, I have the Awadama fever, not this yellow fever you speak of. There's a difference. And you wouldn't know the difference because you probably don't even know what Baby Metal song I'm referring to. Anyways, reveal to me, Clow cards, what message you have for me regarding my romantic situation. Reris. Cells. Bakayaro. So we have the big card, the windy card, the arrow, the dream, and the silent. Now, the big is indicating that this is the big blossoming romance, the romance of all romances. The windy is indicating that it will sweep all other romances or ideas of romances of the past out of the picture. Like this will be the romance of all romance so grand that it just kind of pushes aside every other sort of past conception of romances and relationships. The arrow means that it's like Cupid has shot both of our hearts with this idea of being together. Watch the previous episodes and stop interrupting my reading. The dream indicates that I will receive visions and dreams regarding the situation with my romance and finding the ideas and concepts necessary to lead me closer to it within those. The silent indicates this is not the time to approach this person or speak to them because they might be best to confront me first, and that will lead to the fulfillment. So that's a very good understanding of it based on those 5 cards. And now I will do the situation regarding my career. So funny that Bakayaro commented that. I'm like, if you watched any of the previous episodes, you would have an understanding of that. Go back and watch the previous episodes. Anyways, I apologize for that. Anybody who does enjoy the show and wants new content, people remind you of things of the past. It's unavoidable. Anyways, we will get into the career reading. Oh, great Clow cards of Colorido, using the power of the sun, the moon, and the stars, reveal to me what message, using the universal consciousness and infinite intelligence, to guide me moving forward with it. There is. So the first card that came up was the Cloud card. Then it was the Erase, the Shot, the Bubbles, and the Fly. Now, what this is indicating is that things are actually rising. They're rising above where they currently stand. The Erase means that ideas or things of the past are being wiped clean, like they're basically being washed away. It's being reborn anew, because you have to let go of the old ideas and conceptions regarding the career, maybe obstacles or difficulties. Letting go of those will help propel me forward. Now, the Shot means basically take every chance I can get regarding my career, because who knows, one chance out of all of them could be like hitting the bullseye. So it's necessary to examine every sort of potential in this case. The Bubbles means that new opportunities are beginning to pop up. It means that I will be introduced to people who have very charismatic, charming personalities as well, that have like a bubbly persona that will actually vouch for me and my music on my behalf. And the Fly indicates travel, but also soaring to new heights. So all of these are very good regarding the nature of the career. That concludes that reading, and now we will get into our reading of Neville Goddard, since there's nobody else who wants a fortune told tonight. And then we will conclude with the general ideas of dreams, goals, and desires. So tonight we will read from The Power of Awareness, and we will find the chapter that speaks to me and sort of sticks out. The first one that popped up, oddly enough, was the chapter on attitude. So we'll read that one. Experiments recently conducted by Merle Lawrence, Princeton, and Adelbert Amos, Dartmouth, in the latter psychology laboratory in Hanover, New Hampshire, prove that what you see when you look at something depends not so much on what is there as on the assumption you make when you look. Since what we believe is to be the real physical world is actually only an assumptive world, it is not surprising that these experiments prove that what appears to be solid reality is actually the results of expectations or assumptions. Your assumptions determine not only what you see, but also what you do, for they govern all your conscious and subconscious movements towards the fulfillment of themselves. Over a century ago, this truth was stated by Emerson as follows: as the world was plastic and fluid in the hands of God, so it is ever too so much of his attributes as we bring to it. To ignorance and sin it is flint. They adapt themselves to it as they may, but in proportion as a man has anything in him divine, the firmament flows before him and takes his signet and form. Your assumption is the hand of God molding the firmament into the image of that which you assume. The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the high tide which lifts you easily off the bar of the senses where you have so long lain stranded. It lifts the mind into prophecy in the full right of sense of the word. And if you have that controlled imagination and absorbed attention, which it is possible to attain, you may be sure that all your assumptions implies will come to pass. When William Blake wrote, "What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be," he was only repeating the eternal truth. There is nothing unclean of itself, But to him that esteemeth anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. Because he's a genius. Look him up. And that's not how you spell his name. Because there is nothing unclean of itself or clean of itself, you should assume the best and think only of that which is lovely and of good report. It is not superior insight, but ignorance of this law of assumption, if you read into the greatness of men some littleness with which you may be familiar, or into some situation or circumstance an unfavorable conviction. Your particular relationship to another influences your assumption with respect to that other and makes you see in him that which you do see. If you can change your opinion of another, then what you now believe of him cannot be absolutely true, but is only relatively true. The following is an actual case history illustrating how the law of assumption works. One day, a costume designer described to me her difficulties in working with a prominent theatrical producer. She was convinced that he unjustly criticized and rejected her best work, and that often he was deliberately rude and unfair to her. Upon hearing her story, I explained that if she found the other rude and unfair, it was a sure sign that she herself was wanting, and that it was not the producer, but herself, that was in need of a new attitude. I told her that the power of this law of assumption and its practical application could be discovered only through experience, and that only by assuming that the situation was already what she wanted it to be, could she prove that she could bring about the change desired. Her employer was merely bearing witness, telling her by his behavior what her concept of him was. I suggested that it was quite probable that she was carrying on conversations with him in her mind which were filled with criticism and recriminations. There was no doubt but that she was mentally arguing with the producer, for others only echo that which we whisper to them in secret. I asked her if it was not true that she talked to him mentally, and if so, what those conversations were like. She confessed that every morning on her way to the theater, she told him just what she thought of him, in a way she would never have dared address him in person. The intensity and force of her mental arguments with him automatically established his behavior towards her. Arigato. She began to realize that all of us carry on mental conversations, but unfortunately, on most occasions, these conversations are argumentative, that we have only to observe the passer-by on the street to prove this assertion. That so many people are mentally engrossed in conversation and few appear to be happy about it. But the very intensity of their feeling must lead them quickly to the unpleasant incident they themselves have mentally created and therefore must now encounter. When she realized what she had been doing, she agreed to change her attitude and to live this law faithfully by assuming that her job was highly satisfactory and her relationship with the producer was a very happy one. To do this, she agreed that before going to sleep at night, on her way to work, and at other intervals during the day, she would imagine that he had congratulated her on her fine designs and that she in turn had thanked him for his praise and kindness. To her great delight, she soon discovered for herself that her own attitude was the cause of all that befell her. The behavior of her employer miraculously reversed itself, his attitude echoing as it had always done. That which she had assumed now reflected her changed concept of him. What she did was, by the power of her imagination, her persistent assumption influenced his behavior and determined his attitude towards her. With the passport of desire on the wings of a controlled imagination, she traveled into the future of her own predetermined experience. Thus we see it is not facts, but that which we create in our imagination, which shapes our lives. For most of the conflicts of the day are due to the want of little imagination to cast the beam out of her own eye. It is the exact and literal minded who live in a fictitious world. As this designer, by her controlled imagination, started the subtle change in her employer's mind, so can we, by the power of our own imagination and wisely directed feeling, solve our problems. By the intensity of her imagination and feeling, the designer cast a kind of enchantment on her producer's mind and caused him to think that his generous praise originated with him. Often our most elaborate and original thoughts are determined by another. We should not ever entertain any idea which is not satisfactory to ourselves. We should never be certain that it was not some woman treading in the winepress who began that subtle change in men's mind, or that the passion did not begin in the mind of some shepherd boy, lighting up his eyes for a moment before it ran upon its way. William Butler Yeats. And that concludes that chapter. So, yeah, in fact, I actually was really moved by that chapter. It kind of made me think about my own day and sort of started to revise it in my mind. By the way, if anybody's interested, the book is The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, and that was chapter 7, Attitude. So the important thing I grasped from that chapter that really related to me was the idea of attitude is so crucial, because when we have a negative attitude, we tend to draw more negative things towards us. Whereas when we have a positive attitude, we tend to approach the situation with a more positive state of consciousness and more of sort of a calm mentality of how to handle things. And it's funny because despite the difficulties of today, I actually wanted to approach this show with sort of a good vibration, a good state of mind, no matter what happened. I knew, well, you know what, sometimes you get hecklers, you get people who criticize you, who make jokes, but I want to do this. I like doing this show. Since it's the last episode of the season, I might as well have fun with it and do the best I can with it. And oddly enough, I admit there was some lingering negativity in my attitude from previously in the day. And then, oddly enough, that reflected itself. But when I stopped thinking about the negativity and dwelling on it, I kind of just brushed it off and laughed about it. And as I was reading, in the back of my mind, I started to think, oh, well, how would it feel if somebody positive and supported commenting, like encouraging and supporting me, instead of like the hecklers you get, right? Oddly enough, I got that other comment. And I was just kind of shocked by that, because it was like the attitude of my own manifestation in my mind happening like right as it was projected. So thank you, Abs Up in Here, because oddly enough, it was right as I started to think on that feeling of somebody saying something important and supportive that you actually showed up and commented. And that's funny. I don't anymore, to the other person commenting. Oh, glad to hear. For that other person who's talking about smoking weed, I quit that over 6 months ago. I would never go back to that. In fact, to live in Japan, you wouldn't be able to do it anyway. So it was a necessary part of basically becoming the person I wish to be. So I let that go. I would never go back to it. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm very glad to hear, Abs Up in Here, that you enjoyed listening to it on the way home from work. Arigatou gozaimasu. So now, for the remainder of the show, I'm just going to discuss what the plans would be if there was a third season. And also like the main goals, desires, and dreams that I've been working towards and manifesting. I did discuss this last episode, oddly enough, that I had gotten Hitomi Shimatani's autograph, which was one thing that I persisted in the assumption of having, even though I had no evidence. There were times when it seemed like, oh, I don't know how I would get it. I tried to get it. It didn't work, certain things, right? But I still just kept believing, no, I got it. It doesn't matter. it's like, okay, that way didn't work out, but there could be another way that the universe intends to give it to me that will work out better. So I kept persisting in it, just believing I had it, completely assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, despite any sort of delays or trials and tribulations to get it. And sure enough, it's on its way from Japan as we speak, and I'm very excited for that. Now, the other main goals would be eventually marrying Hitomi, Chihara becoming my best friend, which has already started to work in the process. Oddly enough, she always hearts my comments on YouTube. And then I've messaged her a few times on Twitter. And oddly enough, she felt bad because when she posted one of her recent vlog videos, the audio got muted for the last 3 minutes of the video. It wasn't her fault, obviously. I noticed it and I was like, oh, must have been some sort of technical glitch or difficulty, right? And then she posted about it and she felt so sad and ashamed. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh, well, she's my best friend. As her best friend, I would want to say something positive, supportive, and encouraging her, just so she doesn't beat herself up about it. So I typed to her in Japanese to translate for English-speaking audiences. I basically said in English summarization, like, oh, don't beat yourself up about it. It was just great to see you smiling, having fun, and going all over the beautiful places in Japan and having a good time. Like, I'm sure any fans or friends or supporters wouldn't feel too bad about it. It was just good to see you happy and smiling and having a good time. Sure enough, they hearted the comment, and then the next day they did another vlog video where they got KFC from Uber Eats, and Uber Eats there brought them like this big crazy meal, and it was epic, like teriyaki sauce and Jim Beam cola, which I didn't even know such a thing existed. I was like, wow, that's crazy that Uber Eats could bring you that over there, right? And then she basically took the video footage, which had its audio muted, and put it at the end of the video to like kind of catch the audience up on what we couldn't hear. So it all worked out for the best, but that's why I felt like, oh, well, since she's my best friend, I would just want to say something positive and encouraging and supportive. Not to get anything, just so she isn't too hard on herself, because she's a wonderful singer, voice actress, and she's a very sweet, lovely lady, and I'm very grateful and happy that she's my best friend. Obviously, I love Hitomi, and that's why I want to marry her. I'm always grateful for all the great things I get to see with her because, you know, being a VIP fan, I get to see a lot of things and get special pictures that most people don't get access to. So it's kind of a special privilege, and I'm very excited for that. It's funny because this one person commented and he said they don't like foreigners. That's not true. Arigato, abs up in here. Hi, so des. The other person is false though. Actually, they like foreigners quite a lot. There are many different types of foreigners living in Japan. Just because clearly that guy's foolish and Bakayaro is unaware of such. But yeah, you know, Hitomi is the woman I love. Chihara is my best friend. I obviously want to be successful as a recording artist. I would love to make like a purely Japanese pop album one day, which become the first foreign artist to do that. But I've definitely started experimenting with that more. And that's why on the new album I'm starting to record using the producers who worked on Impulse. I did the song for Hitomi as like a response to her song Mystic World, sort of saying how much I love her too. All in Japanese. My first song fully written in Japanese. Boku mo aishiteru yo. It sounded really good. I can't wait to get like the full mixed and mastered version back because then I'm gonna make a new music video for it. It's gonna be solid. And yeah, like another thing is moving to Japan. That's one of my goals. I eventually would love to be so successful as a recording artist that I would have like $111 million of net worth, like, you know, sold a lot of records, become very successful. I have 2 movie scripts I've written. One's a movie about the French composer Eric Satie called Gymnopédie, entirely in French. And then there's also a movie I wrote about a Norwegian who goes to Japan and falls in love with a Japanese woman on Tanabata. It's called Tanabata. Very lovely script. So those are two movies I would love to direct, and I wrote them, but I would also love to maybe play a small part in them too. But I think they would be really good movies when I made them eventually. Some of my other goals is I've been working on a book I've been writing called The Thoughts of Super Kami Guru Alucard. And that would be a goal to publish that book someday. I'd love to create my own original anime called the SKGA, or the Super Kami Guru Alucard Chronicles, sort of based on my life story. I think it would be very interesting. And then I would love to solve the mystery of what happened to Takako Mamiya, because she's this very great Japanese pop artist who made this album that's worth like hundreds and thousands of dollars, depending on the copy and its original context, like nowadays. And it's got millions of views on a lot of the songs and the albums on YouTube now, but she just vanished off the face of the earth because this album was a flop. And yet a lot of the artists who worked on this record were like masters at what they did. You had the drummer of Tatsuri Yamashita's band play on it. You had the bassist of Cassiopeia on it. You had the guy who directed The Grudge, Ju-on The Grudge, the original Grudge, and then the North American The Grudge. He did the sound engineering on it. And yeah, even there's a composer who did the soundtrack for Kingdom Hearts. He actually played keyboards on it. So it's just phenomenal. In fact, the brass section on that, like a lot of the horns and the saxophones, they actually ended up working on the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack. So yeah, all these great musicians, this fantastic record that like Takako sings with a mix of Japanese pop and jazz and a lot of really midnight melancholy vibes is beautiful. But then she just vanished off the face of the earth and nobody knows what happened to her. In fact, people have been searching for years because she'd be entitled to some royalties now that it's actually done so well and made so much money. But oddly enough, nobody has found it to this day. So eventually, solving the mystery of what happened to her, that's another one of my goals. And then the last one is I would like to co-produce certain anime series that never had a third season that I always wish would have. Like The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, that would be one I would love to work on. Bakuto Testo Shokanju. And even Card Captor Sakura, the clear card, if they don't make a second season, I'd love to be on their butts and help them produce the third season. Exactly. See, Abs up in here gets it. That would just be wonderful if there was a third season, right? Because she hypes it up during the third last episode, Live Alive. Like, she's saying to Kyon, like, oh, next year we got to make a band, create a whole new image of what bands are. And, we got to make a sequel to our movie and all this. And it's like, you get so excited. You're like, oh, God, they got to, like, make a third season. And then they didn't. And that's what, like, it hyped the crowd up so much. And considering it's the fourth biggest anime in Japanese history, I'm like, they got to make a third season. I will help them make a third season if that's what it takes. But there's got to be a season 3 to bring to life what Haruhi described. The image of a new band and the sequel to the movie. It'd just be great. And then you also said, Abs up in here. Oh, yeah, I love Eric Satie. Gymnopody is where I got, like, the idea of the movie script. And then I also did a song called Gymnopody Trilogy with OG Lope Dog and Retrospect, 2 Canadian proteges of mine as rappers. Had a vibraphone solo at the end of it, too. And that was actually inspired by, like, the concept of Gymnopody being in 3 parts. It's also references to the show Twin Peaks, too. But yeah, I love music of all kinds. If it's good music, it could be in any sort of spectrum or atmosphere. If it's got the right soul, I mean, I love my Ray Charles too. You know what I'm saying? It's got to have soul to it. If it's got the right soul, then it's good. The person talking about the suicide forest, that's not even cool or funny, man. Like, I don't know why you're trying to bring negativity into this. See, I agree. I agree with that. Abs up in here, got it right. Anyways, that will conclude our broadcast for this evening, and this will be the last episode for the season. But if people would like readings, or if you'd like me to come back and make a third season, please comment after the broadcast and just let me know, and when things settle down after working on my new album, A Point to Prove More, I will definitely make a third season if there is a demand for it. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Arigato gozaimasu, minasan. Oyasumi nasai. Matane.